8 seconds on top of a bull. 2 minutes unconscious in the dirt, and a decision from a 7-year-old boy that no one expected. A miracle of the Virgin Mary that began when everyone thought it was already too late. But before we continue, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. I'd love to see how far the miracles of the Virgin Mary are reaching. You know that kind of person who seems to never doubt themselves? That confidence that borders on arrogance, but works because they really are that good at what they do? Colt Matthews was that kind of person. 31 years old. 15 of them spent riding bulls professionally. Arena after arena, state after state, Colt had built a reputation. That Saturday afternoon somewhere in Texas, the arena was packed. 8,000 people. The smell of popcorn and dust, the deafening sound of country music blasting from the speakers. The kind of event Colt had done hundreds of times before. Backstage, he was getting his gear ready. Belt buckle, glove, protective vest. Every move was automatic. A younger rider approached him. "Man, that bull you got today, I heard he's already seriously hurt 3 guys this year." Colt kept adjusting his buckle without looking up. "I've ridden worse. Just saying." "I know what I'm doing." The guy walked away. Everyone knew Colt. There was no point trying to give him advice. At home, hours earlier, Rebecca was in the kitchen making sandwiches to take along. Her son Mason, 7 years old, messy blonde hair, red cap on his head, was sitting at the table coloring a picture. "Mom, is Daddy going to win today?" "He always does, sweetheart." "He never gets scared?" Rebecca stopped what she was doing and looked at her son. "Everybody gets scared sometimes, Mason." "But not Daddy." Rebecca didn't answer. The truth was she didn't know if Colt still felt fear about anything. He had grown so hardened, especially after his mother passed away. Mason went back to coloring, but after a few seconds he asked, "Mom, can I take Grandma's rosary today?" Rebecca felt a tightness in her chest. The blue rosary Colt's mother had left for Mason before she died. The same mother Colt had refused to talk about for 10 years. "Of course you can, sweetheart. But keep it safe in your pocket, okay? I'm going to pray for Daddy, just like Grandma used to." Rebecca said nothing, but her eyes filled with tears. Mason had never met his grandmother, but somehow he had inherited her faith, a faith Colt had completely rejected. Colt walked into the kitchen at that moment, grabbing his car keys. "Let's go. I don't want to be late." The arena was boiling with excitement. The first rides of the day had already taken place. Some good, some bad. One guy had broken his arm during the second ride. He was taken away by ambulance while the crowd applauded politely. Rebecca and Mason sat in the 3rd row on the left, their usual spot. Mason held the rosary hidden in his pocket, his fingers pressing the glass beads. The announcer called out, "And now, ladies and gentlemen, one of the most respected veterans of the circuit, Colt Matthews." The crowd roared. Colt was well known, feared. He entered the chute where the bull was already waiting. A massive animal, 160 pounds of pure muscle and fury. Its name was Bone Crusher. Colt mounted, adjusted his position, wrapped the rope around his hand. Took one deep breath, then nodded. The gate opened. 3 seconds, perfect. Colt was in control, moving with the bull, anticipating every spin. 4 seconds, still perfect. The crowd began to shout louder. 5 seconds. The bull spun in a way Colt didn't expect. Too fast, too far to the left. 6 seconds. Colt lost his center of gravity. 7 seconds. He fell. And what happened next, no one in the arena would forget any time soon. Colt hit the ground on his side. Before the bullfighters could reach him, the bull's hoof struck his ribs. Then his leg. Rebecca covered her mouth with both hands. Mason began to scream, "Dad! Dad!" The bullfighters finally managed to drive the bull away. Colt lay motionless in the dirt. The medical team rushed into the arena. The crowd fell completely silent. That terrifying silence that only happens when something truly serious has just occurred. Mason was crying, trying to climb down from the stands. Rebecca held him tightly. "Mason! No! You can't go down there!" "I have to. Dad!" Rebecca could only see from afar. She saw the paramedics gathered around Colt, saw the quick movements, saw the stretcher being brought in. Mason broke free from his mother in a moment of distraction. He was small enough to slip between people, fast enough to reach the ground before anyone could stop him. He ran. He ran along the side of the arena, past the distracted security guards, and into the dirt. A paramedic saw him coming. "Hey, kid, you can't—" "He's my dad!" The paramedic looked from Colt, unconscious on the stretcher, to the boy with tears streaming down his face. He hesitated. Mason came closer, pulled the blue rosary from his pocket. His hands were trembling so much he almost dropped it. He took Colt's hand and placed the rosary inside, closing his father's fingers around the glass beads. "Dad, Grandma said this protects you. Please." His voice broke. He couldn't finish the sentence. 2 security guards arrived and gently but firmly led him away. Mason watched as the ambulance carried his father off. Colt's hand was still closed around the blue rosary. At the hospital, Rebecca had been waiting for hours. Mason slept in her lap, finally exhausted from crying. The doctor had said the surgery went well, but the condition was serious: broken ribs, internal injuries, spinal damage, and the next 48 hours would be critical. Rebecca didn't cry. She couldn't. She had to be strong for Mason. But inside, she was shattered. A nurse approached. "Mrs. Matthews, your husband is in recovery. You can see him now if you'd like." Rebecca left Mason in the nurse's care and walked down the cold corridors to room 304. Colt lay in the bed, surrounded by machines. The beeping of the monitors sliced through the silence. The invincible man now looked like a sleeping boy. Rebecca approached and took his hand, and then she saw it, on the nightstand, the blue rosary. The nurse had placed it there with Colt's other belongings. The glass beads glimmered faintly under the fluorescent light of the room. Rebecca picked up the rosary, held it for a moment. She wasn't religious. She never had been. But at that moment, with her husband in that condition and her son out there, she did something she had never done before. She prayed. She didn't know the right words. She didn't know if she was doing it right. She just held the rosary and whispered, "Please, he's all we have, please." She placed the rosary back on the table and left the room, wiping her eyes before anyone could see her cry. 3 days later. Colt was awake, but the pain was constant. Even with all the medication, it hurt. It hurt to breathe. It hurt to move. It hurt just to exist. Rebecca and Mason came to visit every day. Mason stayed quiet, just holding his father's hand, not knowing what to say. Seeing his father like that, weak, injured, dependent, had broken something inside him. That afternoon, the doctor came in for the routine evaluation. Dr. Patterson was a serious, straightforward man. Colt preferred it that way, no sugarcoating, no false hopes. "Mr. Matthews, I need to be honest with you. The spinal injuries are significant. We managed to stabilize them, but there's damage that might be permanent." "What does that mean?" "It means there's a real possibility you'll have limited mobility for the rest of your life." Silence. "You're telling me it's over." "I'm telling you your career as a bull rider is over." "Yes." Colt looked up at the ceiling. 15 years. 15 years of his life, his entire identity, everything he knew how to do, over. "How long until I'm discharged?" "If everything goes well, 2 weeks. After that, months of physical therapy. We'll see how your body responds." The doctor left. Colt remained alone in the room, staring at the white ceiling, feeling the weight of everything collapsing on him. His career was over. His body was broken. And for the first time in 15 years, Colt Matthews felt something he had forgotten: real fear. The following days were a monotonous routine of pain, medication, visits, more pain, more medication. Rebecca came every day after work. Mason came with her, always quiet, always holding his father's hand. Colt tried to be strong in front of them, tried to smile, to make jokes. But when they left and he was alone at night, the mask fell. A week after the accident, Colt was lying in the dark. It was almost 2 a.m. The pain was particularly bad that night. So there he was, alone, in pain, in the dark. He looked at the nightstand. The blue rosary was still there. The truth was, he couldn't look at that rosary without feeling something complicated: anger, sadness, regret. It had been his mother's rosary. She had carried it to every ride, every event, every competition. She'd sit in the front row praying, always with that blue rosary in her hands. And Colt used to think that was weak, unnecessary. If you're good enough, you don't need luck or prayers. You need skill. His mother had fallen ill when he was 21. She prayed. She prayed every day with that blue rosary. She asked Colt to pray with her. He refused. "Mom, that's not going to help. You need treatment, not prayers." She passed away 6 months later, and Colt never wanted to see that blue rosary again, never wanted to hear about faith, about prayers, about God. If there was a God, his mother would still be alive. But now, lying there in the dark with pain that medicine couldn't ease, with a career that was over, and an uncertain future, Colt found himself looking at that rosary. And for the first time in years, a part of him wanted to believe. He wanted to believe that maybe his mother had been right, that maybe there was something beyond skill, beyond control, beyond what he could do on his own. But that part was small, and he was too tired to fight it. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep. 3 hours later, 5:30 in the morning, Colt woke up, not because the pain woke him, not because a nurse came in. He woke up because something was different. The room was dark except for the faint light from the hallway filtering through the half-open door. The monitors beeped in their usual rhythm. But there was something else. A scent. Roses. Intense. Fresh. Impossible. There were no flowers in the room. The window was closed, but the scent was undeniable. Colt turned his head, confused. And then he saw her. A woman was standing beside his bed. A blue mantle covered her head, her hands clasped together. She was real. As real as anyone. He tried to speak, but couldn't. No sound came out. She just looked at him. And in that gaze, Colt felt something he had never felt before. Peace. It wasn't just the absence of tension. It was something deep, visceral, that entered through every pore of his body and dissolved everything. The anger, the fear, the pain, the pride, everything. It was as if someone was saying, "You are not alone," without using words. It was love, unconditional love, love that knows every mistake, every failure, every moment of weakness, and loves anyway, love that doesn't judge, doesn't demand, simply exists. Colt felt his eyes fill with tears. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. She just kept looking at him with that infinite compassion. And then Colt completely broke down. He cried like he hadn't cried since childhood. Deep sobs coming from somewhere he had locked away for years. He cried for the mother he lost. He cried for 10 years of anger. He cried for having been so proud, so sure of himself. He cried for almost leaving Mason without a father. He cried because he finally understood he wasn't indestructible. He never was. And that was okay. The woman in blue remained there. And somehow her presence was all Colt needed. How much time passed? He didn't know. It could have been 5 minutes or an hour. When he finally managed to breathe again, when the tears stopped falling, he opened his eyes. She was no longer there, but the peace remained. The scent of roses remained. And something fundamental inside Colt had changed. He looked at the bedside table. The blue rosary was there, glowing softly in the dim hallway light. With trembling hands, Colt picked up the rosary. He held the glass beads between his fingers. He didn't remember how to pray. But he whispered into the dark, "Mom, you were right. I'm sorry. Sorry for being so stubborn." And for the first time, Colt prayed. It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't perfect. He couldn't remember the full words of the Hail Mary, only fragments his mother used to say. But it was sincere. And when he finished, he held the rosary against his chest and finally fell asleep. For the first time since the accident, he slept without pain. The next morning, the nurse came in to check the vital signs. "Good morning, Mr. Matthews." "How did you sleep?" Colt hesitated. "Fine." The nurse frowned slightly, glancing at the monitor. "Your vitals have improved." She left. Colt kept staring at the ceiling. He didn't tell her what had happened. He wasn't going to tell anyone. Who would believe him? But he knew. He had seen it. He had felt it. And that was enough. The following days were different. Colt still felt pain. He was still confined to that hospital bed, still facing an uncertain future. But something inside him had changed. When Rebecca and Mason came to visit, he was different, more present, more attentive. He listened to what they said, asked questions, laughed at Mason's stories about school, Rebecca noticed. "You're different." Colt smiled. 2 weeks after the accident. Dr. Patterson came in for the final evaluation before discharge. He did the routine exams, checked the latest imaging results. Then he paused. "Mr. Matthews, these results, are they bad?" "No, they're better than I expected." The doctor kept looking at the scans, comparing them to the previous ones. "Faster than what would normally be expected." "Is that good?" "It's excellent. There's still damage. You'll still need extensive physical therapy, but—" The doctor looked at Colt. "Your prognosis has improved significantly." Colt felt something tighten in his chest. When the doctor left, Colt stayed alone in the room. He looked at the rosary on the table and whispered softly, "Thank you." Discharge day, 3 weeks after the accident. Rebecca helped Colt into the car. He still moved slowly, still felt pain, but he was going home. Mason was in the back seat, holding a drawing he had made at the hospital. It was a picture of the family, Dad, Mom, and him, all holding hands. In the corner, a carefully drawn blue rosary. "Do you like it, Dad?" Colt looked at it and smiled. "I love it, son." On the way home, Mason fell asleep in the back seat. Rebecca drove in silence. After a few minutes, she said, "Are you going to tell me what happened?" "What are you talking about?" "Colt, I've known you for 12 years. Something's changed, and it's not just the accident." Colt looked out the window. Fields passing by. Blue sky. An ordinary day. "I don't know if you'd believe me. Try me." He hesitated for a long moment, then said, "There was a night in the hospital. I was alone, in pain, thinking about everything I'd lost, and then—" He stopped. How could he explain it? "I had a vision, or a dream, or I don't even know what it was, but it was real, Becky. It was real." "What did you see?" Colt didn't answer directly. "Remember how my mother used to pray with that blue rosary? How she always sat in the front row praying?" "I remember. I used to think that was ridiculous, that she was wasting her time, that faith didn't fix anything. And now I think she was right. And I was wrong." Rebecca didn't say anything, but he saw a tear slide down her cheek. The following months were the hardest of Colt's life. Physical therapy 4 times a week, painful exercises, slow progress. Days when it seemed nothing was improving, days when he wanted to give up. But every morning, before leaving for therapy, he would take the blue rosary and pray. He still didn't know the prayers very well. He still stumbled over the words, but he prayed. Mason started praying with him. On Sunday mornings, before breakfast, father and son would sit together, and Mason would try to teach his dad the prayers he had learned on his own. "Like this, Dad, Hail Mary, full of grace." And Colt would repeat, word by word, trying to memorize it. Rebecca watched from the kitchen doorway, unable to believe what she was seeing. The man who had rejected any mention of faith for a decade was there, learning to pray with his 7-year-old son, 4 months after the accident. Colt was at his last physical therapy session of the week. The therapist had just finished the exercises. "Colt, I want you to try something." "What?" "I want you to try taking 5 steps without the walker." Colt looked at her. "You think I can do it?" "There's only one way to find out." Colt stood up slowly, put weight on his legs. 4 months ago the doctors had said he might never walk without crutches. He took the first step, unsteady but firm. Second step, better. Third, fourth. He reached the 5th step and looked back. The therapist was smiling. "You did it. Without help." Colt felt something he hadn't felt in months. Real hope. That night at home, Rebecca made a special dinner to celebrate. Mason was excited, telling everyone at school about his dad's progress. After dinner, Colt called Mason outside. They sat on the porch, looking at the stars. "Mason, can I ask you something?" "Sure, Dad." "Why did you put the rosary in my hand that day at the arena?" Mason thought for a moment. "Because Grandma used to do that. Mom told me. She always took the rosary to your events, so I thought, if I put it in your hand, maybe Grandma would take care of you." Colt felt his eyes fill with tears. "You think it was her? That Grandma helped me?" Mason shook his head. "I think it was the one Grandma always prayed to, the lady in blue." Colt hugged his son, hugged him tight, trying not to cry. "Thank you, son." They sat there in silence, and somewhere Colt knew his mother was smiling. Because sometimes the greatest miracles don't happen when we ask for them. They happen when we finally stop fighting and surrender, when we admit we can't do everything alone, when we accept that we need help. And sometimes all it takes for a miracle to begin is a 7-year-old child with enough faith to place a blue rosary in his father's hand and believe that someone was listening. Before we finish, I want to invite you to join our prayer community for the Virgin Mary, a space of faith and hope where people from all over the world come together to pray and share the blessings they've received. If you feel in your heart the desire to be part of this chain of prayer, click below and become a member of the channel today. Come pray with us. And listen, if you made it this far, to the end of Colt and Mason's story, do one thing for me. Write in the comments, Mason's miracle. Let's remember that it was the faith of a little boy that brought his father back to life when everyone else had lost hope. I want to see how many hearts this story truly touches. And every time I read those words in the comments, I'll know that one more person believes that miracles of the Virgin Mary still happen. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. Write in the comments about a miracle you've witnessed or experienced, and share this video with someone who needs to renew their hope today. May the Virgin Mary continue to bless and protect you and your family. Amen.